In today's episode of Today in World War II, December 3rd, the Finns withdraw back to the Mannerheim Line against the Soviet Union. The Japanese High Command sends out an order that's going to affect Americans in a bad way. In Stalingrad, the Russians have a major victory inside the city. In the Third Army, Patton penetrates the West Wall and gets into Germany. And finally, the communists attempt a coup d'etat inside Greece. Let's get started. All right, so on December 3rd, 1939, the Finnish units that were fighting the Russians when they attacked just a few days ago, they withdrew to their pre-prepared positions across the Karelian Peninsula called the Mannerheim Line. Now, Mannerheim was the name of their field marshal, and he was the supreme commander of the Finnish forces during the Winter War. A little background on Mr. Mannerheim. He was an officer in the Tsarist army. He was actually pretty old at the time. He was not a spring chicken, so he had an amazing experience, and he knew Russian tactics. He had studied them. He knew them. He was one of them for the most part, though he wasn't communist. He was on the white side. He was on the Tsar side, not on the red side. So he luckily the Finnish government had the foresight to prepare for war, and they decided that the main thrust of the attacks were going to come from through the Karelian Peninsula, which is it's the Black Sea borders Lake Ladoga, and so there is a very narrow approach. And he put not all of his eggs in that basket, but a lot of them, because he felt like that was going to be the main thrust that the Soviets were going to do, and he was proven right. Now, don't think that this was some modern, you know, like that the Maginot Line that the French had. The Finns didn't have money for that. But what they did do, they made very good use of the terrain. The Karelian Peninsula is very rocky. It's forest, very little infrastructure, okay? Very little roads. And it was farms. They had one major city called, well, the Russians call it Vyborg, the Finns call it Viipuri, and been there. It was later on. Spoiler alert: the Russians demanded that in the armistice, and they received that. But right now, it's still Finnish territory, and so that Mannerheim line served them well the next few months in defending themselves against the Soviets. So what I would love for you to do right now is to subscribe to my channel and click the little bell that says notify me. That way, whenever I drop these videos, and as you know by now, I do these things every single freaking day because the war happened every single day. So therefore, get notified and be a subscriber and support me. I'd really appreciate that. Okay. On December 3rd, 1941, the Japanese Navy issued an ominous order to all their senior admirals that stated that they were going to initiate hostilities against the United States and Britain and the Netherlands on December 8th, 1941. Well, you may be asking yourself, well, why did they attack on December 7th, 1941? Well, they did on this side of the international date line. It was December 8th on their side. So a little difference there, but they knew, obviously, by this time, the combined fleet had sailed from the Japanese home islands. It consisted of 6 aircraft carriers. It was the Hiryu, the Akagi, the Kaga, the Soryu, the Shokaku, and what was the other one? Zuikaku. Okay. 6 top of the line modern aircraft carrier with the most modern, best trained uh pilots with the planes that the Americans, the British, the Dutch, they could not stand up against because our equipment was still obsolete, and they took advantage of that, and they would shortly. But this was only December 3rd. But meanwhile, the Japanese were still carrying on the pretense that they were negotiating with the United States, and and they would never actually announce to the United States they were going to declare war. Uh, they declared war with their bombs and their machine gun bullets, killing our sailors and our air crew and our Marines in Pearl Harbor just a few days away. What I would love for you to do is to like this video and leave a comment. It's all about the algorithm. I mean, look, my ego would love to hear you say nice things about me and like my video and so on and so forth, but I'm more strategic than that. I know that the more engagement you have that you show on my videos, the more YouTube will be encouraged to put these videos in someone else's feeds. They can click on it and then they can get addicted to my content just like you are, hopefully. Okay, so thank you. I appreciate that. All right, on December 3rd, 1942, in Stalingrad, the Russians, the Soviets, I should say, finally captured a key landmark, a key building where the Germans had occupied since they first got into Stalingrad. It was important because it overlooked the Soviet positions along the Volga River. And remember, all the supplies were coming across the Volga River. And of course, they could call artillery strikes against these boats bringing troops and supplies and ammunition and so forth over to the Red Army that was inside Stalingrad. It was a brutal assault. I mean, we're talking hand-to-hand fighting, and I tell you, having spent 20 years living over there, being married to Russians, having I've probably spent more time the last 25 years over there than I did over here. I wouldn't want to fight them. It was interesting. Little family anecdote here. My father was a U.S. Marine. He didn't fight in Vietnam. He got out before the war escalated. But of course, he went to boot camp, and the Soviet Union was the enemy back then. And my sister was engaged to a Russian. He brought his friend over to us to see us in the U.S. And these were, tall, strapping guys. They were athletes. They were pentathletes. And my dad looked at them, and my dad was 5'9". They were like 6'1", 6'2". And they were strong. And he looked at me and said, "Well, I'm glad I didn't have to fight them." It's like, yeah, imagine the Germans, the Wehrmacht and the SS having to fight these guys who are motivated to kill you because they hate you because you've raped and pillaged their country. So that was a big deal in the war in Stalingrad to take that strategic building. And of course, we know that the end was near. It was coming soon for the Germans. And then in 19 December 3rd, 1944, the U.S. Third Army, Patton's army, their armored forces penetrated the German west wall of the Siegfried Line near Saarlauten, Germany, and they were able to penetrate into Germany for the first time. Normally, I think probably at this time, people were saying, "Cool, we're into Germany now. We could be weeks away from the end of the war." Well, let's put this out. Hold my comment for a second. Meanwhile, the British Second Army, they had mopped up German resistance west of the River Maas. So at this time, everybody thought that things were going to be kind of cool. We're going to get the war was going to be over, that we had the Germans licked, we had them beat. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who don't know history. For those of you who do, you know what's coming real soon, in just a matter of just a couple of weeks. But at that time, there was still the illusion that everything was going to be fine and we were going to be able to take Germany and in the war pretty soon. In fact, Eisenhower and some of the generals, they had already left to go on vacation, take a leave of absence to go, celebrate the holidays, not knowing what was coming. So, but as of right now, anyway, everything looked hunky dory. And finally, on December 3rd, 1944, in Greece, Greece had already been liberated from the Germans, but the communist-controlled National Liberation Front, it's a party in Greece, they decided to stage a huge demonstration in Athens that actually became, I think, a trial run for a coup d'etat. There's a lot of violence, and it was luckily it was controlled because you still had British troops there, and Greek government forces were still strong enough, and they were able to put them in their place, as it were. But it was a prelude to what was going to happen soon. And this is not part of my study here on World War II. I may cover that in a different project once I finish this project. But you may or may not know, but there was, there was a Greek uprising or communist uprising in Greece back in 46 to 49, and they came closer than you think to taking over Greece. And if it wasn't before the British and the American support to stop it, then they might have gone communist. But luckily for the Greek population, what I think the right side won, and they were able to keep their freedom and not be under a communist regime. Well, that's what happened today on December 3rd. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching this video. I can't wait for you to watch tomorrow's. Thank you.